International Media TV, television that listens to you.
Hi, I'm Johnnie Burrell. Welcome to the program.
I helped my father write his memoir, Victory, because I grew up listening to my father tell his stories, and I was the most appropriate one to assist him with this endeavor. I know what kind of man he is, and I know what helped him be a successful Tuskegee Airman. I dedicated the book to fathers and their children because this is an important relationship in someone's development, in a child's development. And I learned a lot from my father, but the most important thing I learned from him is that given America as it is, that no matter what anyone says about you, no matter how long they say it, it's your choice whether you believe them or not. I decided that I would live up to my potential, just as my father had, and ignore what the media or scientists or anyone else had to say about the lives of black people. I decided to live my life the way my father had lived his life and his father before him, simply as a human being. I wanted to share my story with children so that they could have a positive role model in their lives like I had in mine.
For those who are not familiar with the story of the Tuskegee Airmen, here's an overview. In spite of adversity that limited opportunities, African Americans have played a significant role in U.S. military history over the past 300 years. They were denied military leadership roles and skilled training because many believed they lacked qualifications for combat duty. Before 1940, African Americans were barred from flying for the U.S. military. Civil rights organizations and the black press exerted pressure that resulted in the formation of an all-African American pursuit squadron based in Tuskegee, Alabama in 1941. They became known as the Tuskegee Airmen. Their accomplishments changed the course of American history. I'm here in Belmont, California, at the home of Tuskegee Airman and Stanford University law graduate, Captain Les Williams. His book is titled Victory, Tales of a Tuskegee Airman. It was written by his daughter, Penny. She's also a Stanford University graduate, and her discipline was journalism. Thanks for the invitation, Captain.
You're welcome.
One of the things that struck me as I read the book, throughout the book, you always aligned yourself with people who excelled, like Jackie Robinson, and disciplines that required, endeavors that required discipline. Talk to us about your boyhood, growing up. Your father was very instrumental in your upbringing, and I'm sure those disciplines you participated in helped you as you worked to get your the right to fly, and also the discrimination and the cruelty that you and the other black pilots endured while you were in the military. As a young boy, start from there. Tell us about yourself. You're 92 years old now,
right? And
you were born in San Francisco.
Correct. And my father moved the family right after my birth to San Mateo, California. His occupation was that of a cook. And he was working at the time on the railways that would go through San Mateo, California, particularly the one that went from Los Angeles to San Francisco. One of the stops was San Mateo, and he liked the town. And I assumed that he felt he might be able to start a business there and succeed. And he did, and he did. He succeeded. And so we grew up in San Mateo. All of my schooling was in San Mateo. most of my friends were white because there was a very small population of colored people. And so I went through all of the school system there and even went into college there in San Mateo, at San Mateo Junior College. It was a 2-year college. And necessarily, my playmates were white. And so I didn't really feel that I was being separated for any reason whatsoever from playing with the white children and assuming their characteristics and their interest. And that about took care of my schooling situation in San Mateo.
As a boy, you were in the Boy Scouts.
Yes.
And I alluded to disciplines when we first began. Dance and Boy Scouts require a lot of discipline.
Definitely.
How did those come about in terms of the Boy Scouts first? Tell us about your experience with the Boy Scouts, and we'll move on to dance.
Well, the Boy Scouts had a direct connection with the military experiences I had later on. Boy Scouting taught you discipline right from the start. It taught you how to follow a military pattern. We learned a lot of drill combinations there in the scouting. We also learned how to be obedient and to be obedient swiftly. And I attribute a lot of my knowledge to the Boy Scouts because they had the merit badge system, which meant that you entered into many different disciplines to get the badges that were the result of these efforts. I became an Eagle Scout, and I found all of those experiences, such as the signaling, for instance, very useful later on when I became a pilot.
Morse code.
Yes, definitely the Morse code.
Yeah, how does that work with regard to your training as Tuskegee Airman?
Right. Well, assuming you don't know what the Morse code is, da, 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 it was a lot of dits and das. I got into the service, the Army, and I found out that was their main code, their main means of communicating.
So that worked for you.
It worked for me.
You're kind of ahead of everyone else, or at least maybe other Boy Scouts who are also in the Boy Scouts and knew that. Your friendship with Jackie Robinson wasn't just a friendship. It wasn't just a passing hello and how are you.
No, it was not.
Talk to us about that. And he was about excellence. Hall of Famer, great baseball player. Knocked down color barriers for America, and I'm sure at that time you had no idea that you would also be a person like him in that way and that you would be breaking color barriers. Tell us about that friendship.
All right. I met Jackie Robinson in Pasadena. I was the youngest of a set of 4 brothers, and I was too young to do a lot of the things that they did during the summer, and so my father would send me down to his mother's house in Pasadena, which was less than a couple of blocks away from Jackie Robinson's house. And I'd meet Jackie Robinson practically every day when I went to Pasadena, because we lived a block apart, and we'd go to Lincoln Park and play, and he would play ping pong with me most of the time, and he was excellent at anything that we did athletically, and it carried on that way even through junior college, because he went to Pasadena Junior College and I went to San Mateo Junior College, and we often competed in various athletic contests. And there he was.
I'd meet him at anything.
I'd meet him all the time in those meets, and he would beat me every time in those meets, and particularly the broad jump. But he was not a gloater. He didn't make anything of it. In fact, he tried to help me get better, and I did get better, but I never got good enough to beat him.
Your 4 brothers, again, we're talking about disciplines that helped you to become the man that you are today. You guys formed a band, the four of you, your brothers.
We did.
And you know, music, Boy Scouts, dance, all of those require discipline.
Right.
And you always tried to be as excellent as you could be. Tell us a little bit about the band, you and your brothers forming the band.
Well, we were given private instructors who came to our house my father could afford all of this, and we all played different instruments. And
what did you play?
I played the trumpet.
The trumpet?
Yes, and my brothers played the violin and the saxophone and the piano. And we made a little orchestra out of ourselves.
What's the name of the group?
We had no name. We just called them the Williams Boys.
The Williams Boys.
That's right. That was it.
That was it.
Yeah.
And you also, ultimately down the road, you guys used to play at parties, and did you just have fun with it?
Yes, well, we had fun with it as far as the family was concerned. We played at parties later on during my military period, and that was a big help there, the musical background. It really was a very integral part of my story.
Your father was a huge influence in your life. He was a very successful man.
Yes.
He was also a disciplined and orderly man.
Yes.
Talk to us about your father. In the book, your daughter Penny talks about him and the way that you felt about him. Tell us about your father, Noah.
Well, my father, Noah, was a very disciplined man, and it showed in his business. And he had one expression that I adopted and found out it to be very helpful, and you'll probably recognize that fact as we go along. He told me a little motto that I've never forgotten. It went, never tell a lie, never say die, never stick your finger in another man's pie.
What does never stick your finger in another man's pie?
Well,
Explain that.
That meant mind your own business.
Mind your own business.
Never say die meant to never give up. You're not going to say die. You're going to try to conquer whatever the problem was.
And dance. Talk about the beginnings of dance with regard to how it impacted your decision to go into the military, how you started, why you started. Yeah. At one point, you taught dance to make a living. But
that's right.
At the beginning, how did you get interested in dance?
I got interested in dance because when I graduated from high school, I was 14. I was a shrimp. I had a light voice. My voice hadn't changed yet. I didn't have any of this fuzz that some of them were getting. My voice would never change. It didn't get deeper. So I didn't want to go right into college because I didn't think I would be comfortable and happy. So I took the advice of a young man in San Mateo named Luther Smith, who came from out of town, came from Phoenix, Arizona, and he came with a big idea. He says, well, why don't we learn how to tap dance? And I says, that costs money. You can't learn how to tap dance without going to a dance studio and paying for your lessons. And not only that, the nearest studios were in San Francisco. He said, oh, yes, we can. And his idea was to go to San Francisco and go to all of these popular tap dance studios and ask them to give you a job in exchange for free tap dancing lessons. And most of them said no. And finally we got down to about the last few, and one of them said yes. And his name was Reed McLean. And we did work for our lessons, and he accepted us. He had a big studio downtown on Market Street between 7th and 8th. And because dancing and show business was very popular in those days, and San Francisco had several big stage show theaters, we'd meet a lot of famous stars. We would meet them, say, indirectly. They would come to town and they would rent studios from McLean so that they could keep up to date on their steps. And that's where we saw them in a peculiar way. We saw them through the mirrors. We always found it a need to shine the mirrors that they were practicing in the room that they were practicing in. And we'd peek at their steps and try to pick them up. And of course they caught on to that and said, look, we'll give you some dance steps if you just go somewhere else and clean those mirrors. And we thought that was a good deal. So we learned how to tap dance faster than we thought, because McLean was only giving us one lesson a week.
And some of the people you met along the way and learned from, the Nicholas Brothers and...
Nicholas Brothers and the Condis Brothers and Bill Robinson and Buddy Ebsen and just all the big tap dancing stars in that period.
Mm-hmm. At one point, you opened a studio.
Oh, yeah.
This is much later on.
Yes.
But at one point, the dance and the music came together, which
Right.
opened the door in terms of you going into the military. You decided when the draft was on that you had to go into one arm of the service, and you had to decide which it would be.
Right.
You decided that you didn't want to go into this one or that one because if you lost an arm or a leg, then you couldn't dance.
Exactly.
And you decided you wanted to go into the Air Corps.
I did.
Tell us about that.
Well, I wanted to go in the Air Corps because if I got into the Air Corps and got into combat, I wouldn't be the subject to the injuries that I would have gotten into if I stayed on the ground as a soldier. I'd probably lose an arm or a leg on the ground, and I couldn't dance with that. So I decided to go into the Air Corps because if I got injured in the Air Corps and shot down, my injury would be complete. It would be total. And so I wouldn't have to worry about the Air Corps or the draft or anything of that nature.
And at one time you were at a club performing, and a man came out of the audience after the performance, and talk about what happened after that. This incident opened the door for you to get into the military because before that time you had applied and they assured you that they would process your application.
Yeah.
They never did.
No.
Both, tell us about that time that you waited to hear from the military and did not.
Okay.
And then this incident that happened at the club, then this guy opened the door for you.
Well, in the beginning, I went to San Francisco to try to get into the Air Corps, and I passed all the tests that they had to offer. And I heard them say, go back to San Mateo, and if we get a favorable report from your test, we'll write you a letter. And so I believed them. So I went back to San Mateo, and I never got the letter. I have yet to get the letter. But however, that didn't prevent me from practicing my dancing. And so when I got into the Army, I got into a group of soldiers in an outfit that was completely black. They were all ignorant soldiers from Arkansas, not due to their problem, it was just due to their station in life.
Lack of education.
Right, and all of that.
Exposure to the world, yes.
But there were some of them that were professional musicians. So we made up a band. And I said, why don't we make up a band and an entertainment group and entertain the clubs in town. We were stationed in Seattle, Washington, and we'd entertain the Rotary Club or the Kiwanis or something like that. And the best thing that had ever happened to us, and it's an event that I am very grateful for, was that every time a fellow named Henry Kaiser would make a transport boat to take soldiers and supplies overseas, he would have a christening dance, and he'd invite all the brass, the military brass, the colonels and the generals and the admirals, and then he'd also invite politicians. And so we did that about 3 times, and he was in the audience every time. And this one time that you mentioned, he did come up to our bandstand during a break, and he told us that he liked us, liked the way we performed, wanted to do something for us. So he asked what we wanted to do in the military. I says, I want to be a pilot, no question about it.
You didn't have to think about that.
Oh, well, he thought that was great. He said, well, I'll tell you what, you go down tomorrow to downtown Seattle to the Air Corps recruiting section and tell them that I sent you, and I'll take care of it. And sure enough, I went downtown the next day, and I told them I was sent by General Denson, and that was it. Because in about a week, I'm on a train to Tuskegee, Alabama.
Did you know at the time that black pilots were not allowed to fly? Did you know that?
Yes, but I didn't know enough about it. I didn't know that the only place that they could learn how to fly was in Tuskegee, Alabama. I thought they would be trained in another field called Chanute Field, which was miles away in Illinois. And I went there with my brother Barney to try to get into the Air Corps, and I ran into a lot of trouble.
That's when you ran into trouble.
I did. Yeah.
Talk about the when you did get into training, the black pilots who trained a lot of the Tuskegee Airmen. One was Captain Charles Ash, and if the name rings a bell, he was the cousin of Master Tennis star Arthur Ashe. But talk about the tough love and the regimen of training under black pilots.
Right. Well, when I got to Tuskegee, I found out that their system involved 9 months. The very first thing that we did was go through a course called pre-flight. And in the pre-flight, we had black instructors. They weren't necessarily military men, but they were hired by the military, and they already knew how to fly. And among them was this fellow named Ashe, who was related to the tennis star, Arthur Ashe. And they were tough on us, but they weren't like a redneck was on us. They weren't very open with their hostility. In fact, it turned out to be it wasn't hostility at all. It was their desire that we make the grade.
That you get it right.
That's right, and they put us to some very stiff tests, but they didn't do it the way the whites did later on.
Mm-hmm. I understand that a lot of the black pilots or pilots-to-be were given flawed planes. And
Yes.
Talk to us about the mechanics who kept the planes in order and kept them flying.
Right.
They are part of that whole Tuskegee Airman history also.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that.
Yeah. Well,
The white pilots had the best planes, even
my.
to learn with
oh my,
on.
oh my, yes.
And you guys had just a tough go.
Yeah, we had a tough road to go, and we were given junky planes to learn how to fly in, but we came through. And the only reason that the black pilots that were instructing us were tough on us was that they were black too, and they wanted to see us make the grade.
And the mechanics, how did they? Who trained them? The black pilots trained them in terms of what to do and how to do.
Well,
Excuse me.
not necessarily. The mechanics were trained in a separate place before they came to Tuskegee to train us, and so they were fine, but they were tough too. Mm-hmm. But the white pilots were very bad. They were very bad. They had no respect for us, even though they were just mere soldier mechanics. And so they treated us very much like a Southerner cracker would treat the black.
And there was name calling, the discrimination and the cruelty. We must talk about that.
Yeah.
From the top, there were commanders who commanded the white soldiers not to salute.
Oh yeah.
The black soldiers. You could not go into officers' club.
Oh no.
That was absolute no-no. And at one point, what really shook you in the book, you said you almost lost it when you saw German POWs able to move freely around the grounds,
Yes.
and the black pilots couldn't.
Yeah.
Talk to us about the cruelty and the discrimination, and how did you navigate that whole situation?
That was very difficult, and there was nothing we could do about the fact that the German soldiers were given a lot of privileges that we weren't, and they could roam around the base without any problems. Of course, if they escaped, that's another story, but other than that, they were given many more privileges than we black soldiers, and of course, the white officers did not object to the white soldiers mistreating us, and in fact, they would call us
Encouraged
nigger.
it, I understand.
Yeah, we would be called nigger in many different ways, but we knew definitely what they were saying to us, and so it was just miserable right from the start.
Day in and day out.
Day in and day
Day
out.
in and day out. How did when you talked about in the book a lot of pilots washing out, and it had to do with attitude.
Right.
So it wasn't their ability not to learn the skill of flying, but washing out. Talk to us about that and about attitude. What separated this soldier like yourself and your colleagues who did make it versus those who washed out?
Okay. Well, you notice the term washed out. Washed out means ejected from the flight program altogether. And so a lot of the black candidates were from the North. They weren't used to this hard treatment that those from the South had already been receiving. It didn't ring well with them, and so they decided that they didn't like it. And so they would be very surly and not too cooperative, and they were washed out because they were easy to spot. And that's exactly what the white officers wanted. They wanted us to wash out. They had approved of the fact that their white soldiers did not have to salute black officers, that the enlisted man could treat us any way he wanted to and be absolved of any problems. And so it was just as miserable as you can define that word.
And painful.
And painful.
And also, when you were training, if you had a training run and you landed and maybe you were at the end of the airport, it was a protocol for someone to come get you.
Absolutely.
And so very often the driver was white, they would get near you, find out that the flyer was black, and turn around.
That's right.
You had a long walk.
Yeah,
so you had a lot of those long walks back.
That was pretty insulting. It was a practice and a courtesy of the Air Corps to welcome new planes that would come into their fields and land. And so we came in, and their custom was to go out and meet that plane in a Jeep and have that plane follow them, and they would give them a privileged parking space on the ramp. And so we went to a couple of those in Georgia, and they came out with the Jeep as expected. And the Jeep, when you turned around, had a sign on it saying, "Follow me." And there was nobody to follow, because as soon as they saw that we were black and got out of this plane as black crewmen, they turned around and left us. And we had to find our own way.
Oh, boy.
And that, I don't think you could be insulted more directly than that.
Yeah. We're talking about attitude. General Benjamin O. Davis, talk to us about him. He was the saving grace and the hero, not just for the black pilots there, but ultimately for all of America. Talk about him and the experience of him graduating from West Point.
Right.
And those 4 years, no one spoke to him. And
That's
he made
correct.
it.
He made it. Well, along the way, and here I'm just talking about the whole route that my book covers, we had the situation where B.O. Davis was put in charge of all the black pilots that were flying. He was the general, yeah. He started out as a colonel, but became a general almost immediately. And the reason that his name even comes up is the fact that he just changed the whole world, especially discrimination, as far as the American military was concerned. The problem was that the white bombers would originally approach these targets, and they'd be escorted by white fighter pilots, and these white pilots, fighter pilots, were assigned to protect them from any shooting from enemy fighter pilots. And they didn't really do a good job of it, because the big thing about the Air Corps, you wanted to be an ace. If you became an ace, you became a higher ranking person right away. And to get an ace, you have to shoot down an enemy plane. And so when they were escorting these white bomber pilots, the white fighter pilots would sometimes see some of these German fighters approaching, and they would abandon the white bombers and go out and try to become an ace, try to shoot down some of these men, and left these other planes, the white bombers,
On their own.
Exposed. To death, just openly exposed, because a bomber pilot had to remain on target. When he made his final run, he had to ignore everything around him and head for that run. But by that time, he had lost some of his help from the white fighter pilots, and he would be shot down by the enemy fighter pilots. And that was very sad, because every bomber had at least 10 men in it, so they'd lose them all together. And so finally the black fighter pilots had earned a respect from the fact that they were very good. And so when they went out to a bomb run, B.O. Davis, the general, told them, says, you stay with these white bomber pilots until they finish their run. And if you don't, I'm going to see that you're court-martialed and sent back. And that was all he had to say, because the black fighter pilots obeyed his orders. And
no bombers were ever lost if the Red Tails were escorting them. We're going to get back to that. You started out wanting to fly a fighter.
I did.
And you had a problem with your sinus.
I did.
You said during your training, to get away from the other fighters, you had to learn how to loop.
That's right.
You tell the story. This is your story, not mine.
Well,
and you switched to bomber.
I did. Yeah. Well, that was a big event in my life. I had been put through the fighter pilot training course, and I was just about ready to graduate when they gave us some faster planes to practice in. And one of the maneuvers that we had to do was a loop, which is a vertical circle. And the first time I got exposed to a loop in a fast plane was when I was just about ready to graduate. And I was all by myself in this cockpit. And so I was to practice a loop. And I started my first loop, and I passed out. I fainted. The plane was too much for me. The loop was too much for me. And fortunately, when it got back to its original starting point for this loop, I came to. And I knew right away that I couldn't make a fighter pilot, because I'd kill myself. So the War Department and Congress gave me a break. They had just decided to let the black pilots who wanted to fly bombers. And that was a blessing in disguise to me, just a marvel. And so I volunteered for that group, and I was in the very first group of black bomber pilots. And in fact, I was the very first black pilot to be commissioned a bomber pilot in the United States Air Corps.
You got your bars and your wings.
I did. And nothing to stop me from keeping on as a bomber pilot.
Yeah, great. I want to back up just a second, Captain, back to the discrimination and the cruelty. There was one incident that happened with regard to your wife, Elsie, and the birth of your first daughter, Penny, who is the author of this book, Victory. Tell us about that.
Okay. Well, I was married to Elsie, who looked white, but was not, let's say, officially white in America.
She was mixed race.
She was a mixed race. And so every time I brought her, she would go in to see the doctor by herself and made all of the plans. And so along came the day that my daughter was due to appear. And I couldn't take my wife to the doctor that day. And so she went with a wife of one of the other black pilots. And when the doctor saw this companion with my wife, he deduced right away that she was of a mixed race, and he refused to deliver her. And in fact, he refused to do anything in the way of assisting her get some help right away. But fortunately, there was a doctor who was willing to deliver the baby, and the baby was delivered, but with none of the expectations that my wife had looked forward to. She was put in a room all by herself. No other births were there, but she had was given a separate room, and there was a white doctor that was willing to deliver her in this white hospital. And so the baby was delivered, but it was a very trying moment.
Yeah,
and
sure. That incident also speaks to, excuse me, whites who were determined to do the right thing also. Along the way there were those who stepped in and said, this is not right, and I'm going to do the right thing. We want to talk about the Red Tails.
Okay.
But before we do, there's a new movie opening in theaters now, George Lucas's movie Red Tails. And he put $60 million of his own money into this movie because he believed that this story had to be told. So before you tell us all that you know, we'll just talk about the numbers. Here's the combat record of the Tuskegee Airmen. Over 15,000 combat sorties, including 6,000 plus for the 99th prior to July 44. 111 German airplanes destroyed in the air. 150 German aircraft destroyed on the ground. 950 rail cars, truck and other vehicles destroyed. 1 destroyed sunk by P-47 machine gun fire. 66 pilots killed in action or accidents. 32 pilots downed and captured, POWs. No bombers were lost to enemy aircraft while being escorted. 150 distinguished flying crosses earned. 744 air medals, 8 Purple Hearts, 14 bronze. Talk to us about the Red Tails. Where did the name originate? And tell us about these guys.
Okay. Well, the Red Tails happened to be a squadron of black pilots in the overall group that made up the black pilots under training. It was called the 477th Group, and each squadron had its own particular number, like the 100th or the 332nd, and each squadron had their own little emblem that they wanted. And this one particular squadron, the 332nd or the 100th, wanted to paint their tails red, and they did. And so the bomber pilots would look over on their bomb runs and say, oh, we're being escorted by the Red Tails. They didn't know that they were all black pilots until later on, when they started to suffer some very severe losses. But when they found out that they were the black pilots, they requested from the Air Corps and from Congress that they be allowed to escort them, because they never left them. Those black pilots stayed with them throughout all the bomb runs, and then they would leave them when everything was safe. And that's what the Red Tails is all about, and that's what the movie is all about.
George Bush gave the first 300, not the first, but 300 Tuskegee Airmen Congressional Medals of Honor. Yeah. This was, I think, 2004 or 2005.
Yeah.
And it was a long time coming, but it was well-deserved. If any book is deserving of the title Victory, this is the book. I want to thank Penny for writing the book, George Lucas for the movie, and I want to thank you, Captain, for your service and your bravery.
Thank you.
And also your courage.
Thank you.
You have the last word.
Okay. Well, I do want to leave a last word with the reader, and especially the young reader that might be interested in aviation, to follow the motto, never say die, which means never give up. Never tell a lie, self-explanatory. And never stick your finger in another man's pie. That meant to mind your own business, and you should make it in this world. Now, that was told to me by my father. I stuck by that motto, and I think I did all right.